Just been sitting down with Alistair from the Smart Energy Council. Pretty amazing guy. We talked about so many interesting things, specifically around renewable energies and the role it plays in Australian society. Alastair has a very interesting background, which we'll go into during the podcast. Also has a love for chickens and orchards and living in regional Victoria. So without further ado, sit yourself down, strap yourself in, and let's get stuck into it. I suppose I reckon we just start at the beginning, right?
Like beginning.
Yeah, no, not at the beginning of time, but just like growing up, like, you know, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like and that kind of stuff, without any sort of psychiatrist or psychologist overtones.
You know, it's funny when you say that. I go straight back to, you know, I grew up in a town called Griffith, New South Wales. It's in the middle of middle of the Riverina. It's about the same latitude as Sydney. Very dry, very sunny.
Yes.
Very prosperous, very conservative. Really lovely place to grow up. But it's always sunny. It never rains there. It's irrigation country, and so, you know, I won't go into this, but I actually had to learn how to cope with rain because when I was in my 20s, it would rain and I would feel stuck inside. And I would get sad and I was like, no, I can overcome this. This will be okay. I can put on – did you know you can buy clothes for rain? Anyway, you learn these things at a certain time in your life, probably much younger. For me, that was a real journey. But as a kid, I always loved the sun. I always loved being outside. I loved being barefoot and wearing thongs. And the climate in Griffith really, it's Mediterranean like that. It's warm. And I was very lucky because I had I've got parents that – support me and love me very much, and they would buy me gadgets and gizmos. And I remember I had little solar powered kits when I was a kid. I can't remember how old I might have been, 8 or 9. And I had the little one, you probably know the one, it's a little motor with a little fan on it. You could hook it up to a tiny little, I think it was a polysilicon solar panel back then. And I played with all those things all the time. And I have a really strong memory of, I used to get these little model cars. They're a little Japanese Tamio or something like that. They took 2 AA batteries, had a little motor. You'd build this little plastic car and it would zoom around on a track. And one day I had a solar panel and I had the car and I thought, can I hook the solar panel up onto the car? Will that work?
Right.
And I got a little bit of double-sided tape and I stuck it on the roof of this little car, and it was a panel, you know, it's the size of 2 beer coasters. It's not very big, but I put it out in the sun and the thing went. And it didn't go very fast, but it went. And I always remember that. It was like, that's amazing. And I've always really been fascinated by the magic of solar power. I mean, you know, maybe magic is too hard a word, but I mean, plants have figured it out. They just sit there, absorb this incredible energy from the sky. And I was very, very lucky. I didn't know what I was doing when I finished school. I did the whole gap year, went over through Europe, had heaps of fun there, but I ended up doing a quiz that said maybe you should consider being an engineer. So I did it. I enrolled in engineering. I ended up in Canberra because that seemed like a reasonable... I just went there because it was kind of close to where I grew up. Four hours away by car. Sure, Canberra's as good as anywhere. I don't know anything. A university was a university to me. And that's where I like to tell people I got radicalised. And so, you know, I came from a conservative town and I have a conservative family, like many people my age do. And, you know, I learned about finite resources and sustainability. And as learning a systems engineering degree, you figure out, well, it's like if everything's finite, what are we doing to sort of prepare for this? And I did some solar courses, and that's where it all just sort of went from there.
Let's jump back a bit because you're an engineer. You're many things, but one of the categories, I suppose, and I'm always careful of categorising, compartmentalising. But you're an engineer, and as a kid, in addition to solar, were you one of those kids who wanted to like find out how things work and pull things apart and put them back together, but maybe not get it completely right and that kind of stuff?
You've definitely interviewed other engineers.
I have a lot of engineers.
I remember trying to pull apart some things and you'd have a couple of little springs left over or something like, and you're like, I don't remember where they came from. Can't be that important. And then of course the thing never works again, but that's not the point.
Yes.
Absolutely love pulling things apart. Like, how does it work or why does it work? Very much so. And I broke many things. I very much, you know, in my teens, I didn't do a lot of building, but I definitely did lots of unbuilding.
Right.
Pulling things apart. You know, you just explore things.
Do you think, and I ask this question of all engineers, and is it nature or nurture that makes a good engineer?
Oh, that's a good question. It's probably both, which is maybe a safe and boring answer. But like it's funny, you know, you sort of say, like, I have an engineering degree, and depending who I talk to, I might say yes, I'm an engineer, but I'm also many other things. And sometimes I can be my best engineer when I'm not in a role or a landscape or an environment where typically you would need to be an engineer to be there. But the sort of the foundational things that you learn can help you or support you in just breaking down a problem or doing some systems thinking. You know, sometimes I'll get what's that word where you feel like if I sit in a room full of other engineers, I'll go, oh my gosh, they are all so clever. They all know so much more than me.
Imposter syndrome?
That's the one, imposter syndrome. I definitely would get that, you know, and like I was a fine engineer. I got P's and C's and some D's in there, like, you know, the spectrum of a degree. But I definitely never thought I was the strongest engineer. But where I thought I was a strongest engineer is when I was not necessarily doing the engineering, but maybe I was talking about the engineering or communicating about the engineering. And that's why, you know, half the time I'll see myself as a salesperson, and then half the time I'll see myself as an engineer. Wow. And then I would use the word sales engineer, and I always sort of think of myself as trying to walk both sides of that line.
Yeah, wow. So you obviously like, it seems to me that when engineers go to uni or people studying engineering, they do a lot of maths. And when my son's doing engineering, he's just finished second year mechanical engineering, he's going on to third year. And it seems that the maths is not necessarily applicable for later on, but it teaches you to be analytical and problem solve, and the most important thing, not get that instant gratification, because maths, it doesn't unless it's 2 + 2. You know, advanced maths, you have to go through this process to get the result, hopefully the right one. And would you say that was true when you were studying?
Hearing you say that, it sounds so right, because I remember doing all sorts of maths subjects that were super hard. And I was telling my daughter about how much maths I did at school, because she's in grade 1. She does maths. And I said, well, you only have to do it for another 15 years. It's fine. or whatever journey you choose. But we did all sorts of derivatives and calculus and things. And I don't think I've ever touched that since. But maybe that's not the point of not actually having done those equations, but what you talk about, the process, the discipline. You can learn to figure things out by doing the structure, and then that can be applied on many things in many different areas. I think
it is. You're dead right, and it seems to me out of all sorry, I'll start again. It seems to me that engineers are in high demand for all these other jobs, and I've met a lot of engineers who studied engineering who ended up doing all these other things because of the problem solving, that what they learned and how their minds actually worked, and the ability to solve a problem and analyse it is applicable to anything you do in this world. Yeah. It seems.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I think about that as well, I also it sort of makes my heart bleed that little bit where it's like if you take an Uber, often the people who will be driving you have master's degrees, and they'll be doctors or engineers or anything like that in their hometowns or home countries, but they're not recognised here or whatever it is, so there's a pathway that's missing, and, you know, that's a tragedy. But I do agree with you, and like we're talking about engineering here, but I often think about the same with sales, where it's you don't go to university to learn sales. Often people maybe self-teach themselves, and then you often can end up in all sorts of different interesting roles that aren't necessarily a sales role, but they use all the same skills.
Yeah, there's, obviously with sales, you really have to understand how people work. You actually, I think to be a good salesperson, you actually have to like people. And I know you're smiling, but there's a lot of people out there doing sales who don't like people. There's a lot of people who are managing other human beings who don't like people. And as a result, they're probably not that good at what they do. That's my personal opinion, and I've just temporarily taken my Greenwood hat on. I better put it back on again. But yeah, it seems to me that this is, you know, you have to understand people, but there's also a process too, isn't there, when it comes to sales?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I mean, I think anyone could learn a process and become a salesperson and become somewhat competent, definitely, you know. And I guess there's a huge spectrum. You can be at JB Hi-Fi selling TVs. That's a fairly transactional sale. But then you could be selling jets to the super wealthy or some other sort of topical thing. I think I don't know, I like people. And so what I really enjoyed is like, I always think of it as a dance when you're talking to people. You know, we have an engagement, we're chatting, and if, let's say I was trying to sell you something, as I often am, to me, it's a dance. It's like, well, I need to make sure I present some value to you. That's part of me giving my little dance. And then I need to intrigue you and then bring you on a little story or a journey and then hopefully arouse your emotions so that you're ready to part with all your hard-earned cash. I find it super fun, and where probably what makes sales interesting to me is the behavioral economics behind it. And manipulation is the wrong word. It's the right word, but it's the wrong word. But how you can sort of bring people into a path and go somewhere. And so I always think of the example of a small popcorn at a cinema is $6, right? It's probably, I haven't been to the cinemas in a while. It's probably $8 now. A small popcorn is $8, right?
Yes.
What a ripoff. But all of a sudden that $9 medium, fantastic. It's twice the size and it's only $1 more. All of a sudden I'm thinking of 50% more popcorn for $1. And I've completely changed how I'm approaching the circumstance.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden I've parted with $9 for a popcorn. I love that part of it.
And most of it ended up on the floor.
Yeah, that's right. And not with me. No, that bit's interesting because that's proven psychology, right? And the more you can study it and learn it, the more fun you can have in there. And so, yes, anyone can be a salesperson. You can learn a process. You can like people. You can not like people. But you can also, I think they call them nudges, some of these people that talk in this world. But it's like you can nudge people to do certain things by changing the way you present something. And I like that.
And it's a little bit, I mean, this is hard. It's hard stuff, but it's a little bit easier when what you're selling is what you truly believe in. Because I think it would be really hard to sell something that you don't truly.
I can't comment on this because I don't think I've ever sold something I haven't believed in.
No, I wasn't assuming that, implying that for a second. It's like you're involved in renewable energy, and off camera we were talking about, your passion, and you love it. I mean, everyone at Greenwood, we all love it. It seems everyone I've spoken to at the Smart Energy Council, we love it. We actually have this interest. We see the economic benefit, but there's also this passion, and that allows us to, go and through a sales process it makes it a little bit easier, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's not just, you haven't just studied a product and you're not just sort of selling a product. It becomes part of your identity. Like very much, sustainability is really important. Renewable energy is so important, and I will tell people about what I think about that, regardless of whether I'm on the clock or whatever it's about.
Right. Yes.
I'll happily, if I think I can impart knowledge that's appropriate in that circumstance, absolutely I'll share. But then I am also very mindful as a middle-aged white man, sometimes just bite your tongue and don't say anything, right? And it's like, I'm very cognizant that you need to sometimes just shut up and listen and let other people talk. Even if someone else explains something, it's not perfectly right. I don't want to be the autistic engineer in the corner that says, no, that's not exactly right. You need to blah, 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 blah. It's like, that doesn't matter. If someone said something that's mostly right, who cares? That's great. Everyone else can go on a journey.
So you've got good EQ or good empathy, basically.
I think I do. But then I've not had that validated by any third-party source. Just like, there's a vibe. I reckon
I reckon you do. Talking with you, I reckon you definitely do. So, let's get back. You at uni, you're studying systems engineering, and I don't know what that is.
I guess it's kind of like, how do all the things come together? And so I didn't know what it was until I did it, and I probably still barely know it, having gotten out of it, and maybe that's to do with how much I drank at university. But it's like feedback loops, and how nothing exists in isolation. And the Earth's a really good example, right? The examples are everywhere. If the temperature raises up by 1 degree, all of a sudden we might get the ice caps melt and we get raised sea level, but then maybe more heat's in the ocean, and therefore then we get more sun. It's like you can think about, how does this one thing affect other things? And then are there feedback loops that might be positive or negative that then can influence that, and they can either accelerate it or decelerate it? And so, I mean, the cheaper home battery scheme, I'm not sure if we can talk about this one.
Well, of course.
There's a rebate, so all of a sudden the people who know are like, absolutely, I need to get this. Program gets off and it starts exploding. Then other people hear about it. They hear about how popular is it. The media starts talking about it. This would be a positive feedback loop that then starts fueling the heat in the program. It gets more and more popular. And as other people see other people are doing it, they say, well, I better do it as well.
FOMO.
Yeah, I suppose so. And so sort of that was at my university, systems engineering, everyone had to do a bit of it to understand that whatever you do, you're not just building a bridge. You're not just building a solar panel. It's all part of something bigger. You need to understand that impact.
Are you talking about the interdependence of all things?
Yeah, pretty well. I mean, probably within the engineering realm at least. Yeah. But yeah, exactly right. You can't just build a new ferry for Tasmania without thinking about how big the ports are and whether or not the ferry will interact with the port, right?
Absolutely.
Which is if you know anyone in Tasmania, they'll be pretty upset about this.
Sorry for the Tasmanian viewers who are reminded of what is going on down there. Yes.
You'll get the ferry next year, I believe.
Yes. Look, it's really, you've hit on a really big point that I've spoken to quite a few people about, this interconnection between all things. And definitely, it's not a philosophical approach. I think it's quite a realistic one. The trick is trying to work out all these moving parts and all these connections. If you can change something, which one do you actually concentrate on? Like, as you said, you get this ferry, you got to build a port, right? And there's all these other things. You have to get the workers, you have to get the people qualified, you have to get the accommodation for these people. Then there's the food, and there's logistics of transport, and all of those things. It seems to me the trick is trying to work out, okay, we know there's a connection, but what's the most important one now? What do we do now to affect change?
And you could have gone back a step and said, oh, maybe we could have discounted flights. Like
That's
totally
right.
look at it in the completely other, like maybe that's not the problem at all, how we got here. I do think of that with doctors as well, when you sort of go in to see a doctor and you might have I've got a sore knee, and the doctor will look at that knee, investigate that knee and offer you in for surgery or whatever it might be. But maybe the reason why you've got the sore knee is because you've got a tight shoulder because you played badminton on a Friday, and that's doing some sort of whole thing to your whole system. I find all that sort of stuff really interesting. That's systems thinking, right? Like an osteo for a human body. Why is my toe sore? Oh, it's very simple. Like, did you pull your muscle in your leg the other day, and then therefore you're overcompensating with your walk? I think that's all very interesting. And what's important is thinking enough to know what you can ignore. So it's sort of like identifying the unknowns and the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. So it's like, okay, we're going to do this thing. We think it will impact all of this, could impact that. Is that a high risk or a low risk? Can we ignore it? Great. And then at least you can go ahead with some consideration about everything else that's happening in the periphery.
God, it sounds
like I think
really interesting
you
stuff.
can fix the property bubble, right? And house prices.
Please.
Allow me to,
yes,
please.
Yes.
I think public transport is at the centre of it all. So to me, I think about, Sydney or these places where the price per square metre is just astronomically stupid because people desperately they want to live there because they need to be close to this in the city or need to be close to that or whatever it might be. And it's access to services. Physical proximity is what people like. And I then would think, okay, so it's speed to access proximity. And so then this is where I think of, people love cars and like cars are great, but I have no time for them. Public transport is where it's at. I took a train into Melbourne today. I sat on a train for 90 minutes. I moved 100 kilometres. I got to work on my laptop the whole time. And all of a sudden I pop up, I'm in the centre of Melbourne, right? Imagine if you could get to the centre of Melbourne or other places and it's 30 minutes away via a quick train and all of a sudden you're as far out as Bendigo or Ballarat or all of these places. All of a sudden you make that property much more valuable because you have access to this, which then makes the hyper-concentrated suburbs less valuable or they don't conduct such a royalty. So I think fast access for people movement is the key to reducing some of the pressure on the insane prices of per square meterage in cities. That's what I just can't get past that thought.
It's an interesting thing you mentioned, and I don't know if you want to talk about smart cities, but we'll maybe talk about that later on. But I think what also ties in the process of gentrification, doesn't it? Whereas and this is what happens, like the inner suburbs, which were traditionally working class. For instance, we're in Collingwood right now. You're talking about Victorian terraces, working class, and then what happens? People come in, professionals, they push the working class out further and further to these suburbs that, yes, may have cheaper housing, but they have no infrastructure, they have no schools, and have no public transport, and as a result, they have these massively high rates, as in property rates, property tax. And then lo and behold, 2-income family goes down to 1-income family. You've got a whole street of more, the bank owns these houses. I know there's a correct expression, right? So you're talking about a few things here. You're talking about the working people getting pushed away, further away from where they actually work. People coming in, concentrating there, prices going up, and a manipulated market. But I think I better stop. Alistair smiling here, but no,
I agree with it all.
Yeah, it's we have to tread very carefully. because there is, at this point in time, a concerted effort to do, and we'll talk about smart cities and what they call the 15-minute city.
That's the weaponized word, isn't it? They're meant to be a bad thing.
Well,
so getting somewhere quickly.
The thing is, it's a smart city is they're talking about concentrating the majority of the population into the city, so more density in the urban areas, so everyone's closer to work, this, that, and the other. And look, it's nuanced, but I will say that improving public transport should be bloody number one.
Absolutely. And so there's a thing, right? I own a car. So I ride bicycles, and do not tell people you ride bicycles, right? Because people get so emotionally upset if you're a cyclist. And I'm sure Darren last week would have talked to you all about this.
He didn't,
Australia's
though.
got a real toxic masculinity problem, I think, with cycling, right? It's not seen as macho, and for whatever reason, if you're a cyclist, you're the enemy. You know, you're taking up could you imagine if a cyclist, instead of driving to work today, I decided to ride my bicycle, right? Great, because I enjoyed it. But then I had the audacity to take a car space up with that bicycle. Could you imagine the outrage? You'd be on the front page of the paper. Your bike would end up in the Yarra River. It'd be on fire. But how irrational is that? If I took my car from home and took that car space, fine.
Yep.
No problems at all. But if you're on a bicycle, you're the enemy.
Oh, my gosh.
Enemy number one.
You're dead right. It's funny. This cycling is such it's one of those. It's a very efficient mode of transport. Has been ever since it was invented. It's fairly healthy, but we were talking off camera before at lunch about people jogging in the city, breathing in that particular matter. But cycling is very efficient. It's low impact, so you're not going to get that issue with if you are jogging, you're getting an impact each time landing on hard concrete or asphalt. It's a no-brainer. And now that with electric bicycles as well,
I'm very proud to say I think my wife and I were early adopters with electric bicycles.
Wow.
So we've had e-bikes, I think for maybe 10 years. We had them back in Canberra where we'd buy these little kits off Dillinger off the internet. And it would be like you replace your front wheel with a 1,000-watt motor, strap a battery where the water bottle goes. It had a throttle that went 40. You can't get fined after the fact, doesn't it? 40 kilometers per hour, it was fine. E-bikes are fantastic. And what makes me so happy is when I see particularly older people on e-bikes. And I think fantastic, you've got more mobility, and that's a great thing for you.
It is that you're dead on it. My mother lives in Ashburton, and I go and visit. She's old. She's like in her mid-80s, and there's a park and there's a bike track that goes all the way to the city. And I've noticed in the last 5, 6, maybe 7 years, so many old people, and I'm talking, at least 70 plus.
I think the term is older.
Thank you. Thank you, Alistair,
Older
for that
Australians.
Correction. Yeah. Thank you. Older Australians.
Don't want to ostracise this podcast from those people who have the time to listen on their bike ride to the city.
Stop it. No, you're dead right. I'll rephrase that. There's so many people of a certain age and over who are on these bicycles, these electric bikes, who wouldn't be on a standard bike because of the effort involved. But in saying that, the electric bike can be, one, potentially a transition bike to a non-electric bike, or after a little bit of time with a bit of confidence, they start pedaling more. And it's just, there's a lot of people on these bikes now.
There's nothing to lose. They're everywhere. They're super affordable now. They're ubiquitous. Anyone would jump on one. They've been an incredible part of the transport revolution and the micro-mobility revolution. And I think we should just go into this head first, and cities need to adapt. And I know the installation of a bike path, and I talk about bike path, but it's not a bike path. The installation of a path for micro-mobility is something that we need to invest in because they're not going to go away. In Victoria, JB Hi-Fi was selling so many electric scooters, right? People were on electric scooters. Now, why were people on them? Because they wanted to be on them.
Yes.
People found them useful. They buy electric bicycles because they're useful. This is not something that's going to go away. So I actually think we need to think really carefully about, pedestrians don't want to mix with this sort of traffic type. That makes sense. Let people who are pedestrians be pedestrians. Cars don't want to mix with bikes or people on scooters and vice versa. So we actually have this middle that's missing, which is that, the 20 kilometre to 40 kilometre hour speeds of people on a unicycle, on an electric scooter, on an electric bicycle or a trike or whatever it might be. I think that's a whole category of transport that's not being planned for beyond what I think bike lanes will eventually turn into or are becoming.
And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Other countries have been doing this already.
Well, I believe
the Netherlands.
People always talk about the Netherlands being like as if they always did it, but I think it was something like in the 70s or 80s they decided to do it.
That's right.
And then they started investing heavily in it. I always just have like hearts around my eyes when I think about how nice it must be to cycle in a place that's got such incredible connected infrastructure. I did live in Canberra for 10 years, and Canberra has really good cycling infrastructure. And that's good because not everyone is on a bike. You might be on a scooter or all of these other things. But the point is, you're not near a car, which is smelly and terrifying.
And dangerous.
And you're separated from the kids, the prams, the families. You've got a space to exist and to kind of get around. And it's paradise. I used to commute around a lake to get to work on a bicycle, living the dream.
We could talk a lot. We could talk a lot about bicycles and the electrification, and we will. We'll get back to it. But I want to go back to you at uni. You finished your system engineering. What was your first job after uni?
So what happened? I got the job during uni. So I hadn't finished uni yet, but as part of an engineering degree, you must do work experience. And so I think this was at a time when there might have been global pressures. It was not a good time to become an engineer at that time. I think there was a recession or something.
Wow.
It was not famously great, but I did a couple of solar courses at uni. I was really into it. I wanted to do renewables for my internship. I emailed a bunch of wind companies, never heard anything. And I remember I emailed, this is me, not knowing how to get a job. I emailed places thinking that would get me a job. And I emailed 10 solar companies and one got back to me. And
wow.
You know what is great? And I don't know if nepotism is the right word, but I'll call it a little bit of nepotism. The person who replied was someone I went to university with. They were in the accommodation block. I lived at uni for a while.
It's what you know and who you know.
As soon as I saw a familiar name, I was like, oh, fantastic. This can only be good for me. And so then I had the interview. So I got an internship at this little company called Armada Solar. Now, they were relatively big in Canberra. They were known, but they weren't outside of Canberra. Canberra business, solar panels and window cleaning. And I got a job as an intern I think I got $75 a day, which was great because you're not necessarily meant to get paid. Yeah. And my job was cleaning solar panels. And I got the job with a friend who was doing engineering at the time. And, I had to be creative into how to fill out my engineering report that I was doing engineering discipline things whilst cleaning solar panels. But that's how I got started. And then I got hooked, right? So I did my summer there, worked every day, and that was fantastic. And then I worked part-time for my 5th year at university. I did a 4-year degree, and of course I was so good at it, I sometimes had to repeat some subjects just to, do them twice, as you famously do. And so I did 5 years. And so my whole 5th year I worked there part-time. And then I walked into a full-time job, and I was hooked. I didn't want to leave the industry. It was so interesting. There was so much going on. This was back when you would be selling 3 or 4 kilowatt systems to mums and dads, and they'd be spending $15,000 on them. We were doing big commercial solar systems, which were 30 kilowatts at the time. We were quoting for one that needed a grid connection device. I was in heaven. It was fantastic. It was the glory days. And so I worked there for 5 years.
You did sales there as well?
I did everything.
Wow.
And so this is where I started as an engineer, and I was a system designer, which was just doing quotes, big Excel document, pounding them out. And I sat next to a colleague. It was, 25 staff in a little room like this one. And so I would listen and learn. And sometimes people would walk in the door and the salespeople would be caught up. And so I'd be like, I can sit down and talk to you. I know how to do this. And so just little exposures like that got me more involved in it. And so then I started doing some residential sales work, I think because there was a need for it. It was sort of fallen into my hands. And then the great thing about when you work at a small business is people leave. And, the cream rises to the top when everyone else goes. And so I remember the commercial sales guys like, I'm leaving, I'm going to leave the job. And it's like, well, this is an opportunity for me to have a go. And so I just put my hand up and said yes to everything. So I ended up trying to do commercial sales then. I wouldn't say I was very good at it.
It's hard, though. It's hard, isn't it?
I didn't know what I was doing. I barely knew what I was doing, right? So, you think back on these things as a 22-year-old. I was probably okay. I was not a savant. I wasn't exceptional. But I learnt lots, and that's fine, right? I learned about skylights and learnt more. And then I got a really proud moment, which was where I won a tender for the university that I studied at.
Wow.
And so the ANU did a tender for one of their buildings where they wanted 30 kilowatts on their roof. And I was so pleased that I made the tender, won the tender, and then I got to project manage the job with the stakeholders and then turn it on. And so it was like a really nice thing.
Wow.
All the time going back to my old haunt and being very familiar with it of all of a sudden I'm not a little student learning here. All of a sudden I'm like a professional contractor. And that's That was a very different, like a fun role play, right? You're in a whole different world. And then I also got to experience, and probably what ended up making me, so I've done engineering and sales, right? And sometimes I'll get more passionate about one or the other, but what ended up happening is this company went broke. The company I worked at, I worked there for almost 5 years and it went bankrupt. And it was very, very traumatic. There was all issues with superannuation maybe not being paid, people getting paid late in the lead up to this. It was it was just not a nice experience. And that very much traumatized me. And I think when I then worked for an engineering startup where there was 10 engineers, we were doing really cool stuff, importing triple glazed windows, fun, smart building materials, but we had no professional salespeople. We didn't have that front of the funnel figured out. And I was always concerned, like, I don't want us to go broke. I've been there, I've done that, and it sucks. And so in that role, we had lots of, being a small organization and a startup, we could put on whatever hats you wanted to pick up. And so I gravitated towards, no one's taking up this role. I need to learn, I need to have a go and try and do it. And so I tried to develop all of my skills. And the thing, I didn't realize I was a competent salesperson until 5 years later. So it would have been when I was about 30, which is not that long ago now, really. Yeah, about 6 years ago. And that was because I'd never worked on a purely commission sales role. I'd always been part engineer, part sales. Which is fine until you try and actually measure how good you are at something. And it's like not so easy. And then, I don't know, this is segueing forward a bit. Do you want me to keep going?
No, I want to, because I want to know what you thought of that, the purely commission side of things. That's a different driver there, isn't it?
So it's super different. And so fast forward, I did 10 years in Canberra and that was fun, right? Had a baby with my wife and we had a 3-month-old. I'm like, we need to go back to the country. If we don't move now, we'll never move. We'll be stuck in Canberra. So we jumped. And, this is a famously simple time to move is when you have a 3-month-old baby. So we moved into state and we moved to this little town called Castlemaine, which is up the road from here near Bendigo. And I applied for a bunch of jobs at these solar companies. And I got a job at Kohler Solar in Bendigo. It was known as. It was big at the time.
Yes.
And I got to work in what they call the pod. And so the pod was this little 20-foot shipping container where they packed about 7 salespeople in it. It was like Wolf of Wall Street stuff. Everyone had their headsets like this.
With a bell to ring.
Yeah, we had a bell. I
Did you really have a bell?
We absolutely had the bell. We had a wall with a whiteboard and you would have to ring the bell when you made the sale and write up your thing because you saw everyone's sales. And I loved it. But that's when I realized I knew I was actually competent at what I could do because I came in and there was always people who'd worked there for a little while and they were all fine. But within 2 or 3 months, all of a sudden I could be the top. And then I was often the top salesperson per month.
Wow.
And I was very good at it. I did it for 12 months and then I was like, I'm very bored. I want to do something else.
Yeah.
The journey continued. But that's when I realized, oh no, I can do this. And I assume probably part of it was because I had this huge historical knowledge. So, I did the engineering degree. I'd worked in these different companies. I could bring all this enthusiasm to them and I hold the solar accreditation license. So when I talk to someone, I'd be like, I got this. If you're going to get another quote, who are you talking to? And this actually blew my mind because all my peers didn't have any of this. And I didn't realize you could be a successful solar salesperson when you literally 3 months ago were selling cars.
Wow.
But you absolutely can be. And so this blew my mind that all these people, all my colleagues, and they're all great salespeople, and they would do a great job with you only needed just enough knowledge to be able to sell a product. You didn't need to be a full technical expert. As I was always like, no, you need to just know absolutely everything and then bombard them. But it really opened my eyes to I see it now. I can see how there's you can have all of these people in industry and they might know very little. But that might be just enough for what you need.
For domestic, yes, but not commercial.
Yeah, I think I agree there.
And even batteries.
I wonder how many system designs are being done under the cheaper home battery scheme now, right?
We know.
Come on. Any load analysis? It's just not done.
Look, it's a really interesting point. I've had this conversation with a lot of people. There's the imperative for the salesperson to sell a product, but, promising, like if you come to my house and say, I don't know anything about solar, and you go, I'm going to put batteries in, what does that person think straight away? Oh, yes, if the grid goes out, you're going to service the whole house. Well,
absolutely.
The reality in most cases is that they're not going to be selling a system that's large enough to do that. And two, in a lot of cases, the battery storage they put in, and this is before the most recent rebates, was going to be so bloody small that you'd be lucky to have a light on for more than an hour before.
And to make the system price really cheap, often blackout protection was optional. So if it wasn't brought up and talked about, it wasn't brought in. And people would think, my solar will work during a blackout. Because why would you not? You would assume that, unless you're And I think that's the
Well,
job.
people used to think about that with the Standard Grid Connect, didn't they, in the early days?
Yeah, and it's really the duty of the company to make sure you bring that up. By the way,
Yes.
it's a really important safety feature that you do not have power during a blackout, because it
Yes.
doesn't make any sense to an uninformed person. And for a battery, I think, how angry would you be if you had this huge battery, there was a blackout and the battery went to sleep? You'd be like, what a waste of money. But there are definitely people today, right now, who are installing batteries that may not offer any backup power during a blackout. And I mean, that to me, that's a waste.
It is. I mean, again, it's what is it? Caveat emptor, buyer beware. But it is a much more difficult sell when you've got a battery, when battery storage is involved. Let's say on the grid compared to Standard Grid Connect, and as we were talking about at lunchtime, even more difficult the whole off-grid scenario. But let's go back. So Canberra, you've gone, okay, we've got this child, let's get out of here because this is the only chance we've got. You've gone to Castlemaine, a beautiful part of the world, ex-gold mining, but a really pretty intense, a lot of professionals, a lot of musicians, a lot of artists in Castlemaine. Is that...
Yeah, I think that's right. So I live in Malden at the moment. I've lived there for 5 years, but we moved to Castlemaine. We rented there for a year and a half, and it is they're country towns, but it's quite a progressive, quite a well-educated country town, and I know that can vary widely all across Australia, but I really like that. I think of myself as a country bumpkin, and I can definitely be a hick, but when I was in Canberra, I loved talking about politics. And that's been the hardest cultural change for me, moving to Victoria. And do not tell anybody, but I don't really have a football team. And that is the wrong thing to say to everyone in Victoria.
It's an interesting one. I have a team, but the only time I watch AFL is the grand final and I don't care who's playing because it's an interesting game. But I know what you mean. It is down in Vic. It is very.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about this, if I could. Sorry, just going back. Sorry to interrupt
please.
you. I'm trying to be better about not interrupting.
No, interrupt away. Interrupt away, please.
I went and did this training last week. It was called Bright Spark Training. And so, what's really interesting, where I'm living in Malden, Victoria, and there's a gas network, but it's not connected to the rest of the mains gas. There's a few towns in Victoria where trucks literally have to drive and kind of pump it into a reservoir, and it's like a fragmented part of the gas grid.
Wow.
But never knew this existed. It's
that.
a place, it's all around the shop. But it's becoming super expensive to maintain, and price has been going up. And what actually happened earlier this year is the energy provider actually said, we're done. We're actually going to turn this off. We're not going to do it anymore. And this is the utility death spiral in action in this town, which is really cool. Maybe it's not cool, but if you're affected, there's heaps of things. Talk to me, I'll help you. But it's interesting because we always talk about, people put in solar, people will disconnect from the grid. You'll get this death spiral where there's a fixed amount of base running costs and fewer people contribute to it. Therefore, it gets more expensive. Therefore, more people go off the grid. And so it dies. And we're going to see this to the gas networks in these areas in real time. So there's about 1,000 residents who are affected all across Victoria. And they will either, for free of charge, turn you back to bottled gas, or they'll give you $1,000 and say, if you want to electrify, we'll give you $1,000.
Oh, that's not going to go far.
Well, that won't in isolation. But to go back to this training, the reason why I did it, the Bright Spark training, is because Victoria's actually full of rebates. And so there are so many rebates if you want to electrify in Victoria. There's rebates to change to, I think, an electric heat pump hot water system, to get an electric split system, to change your gas stove. There's rebates almost everywhere along the way if you want to get your house energy efficiency inspected. And so once you get this $1,000 from the gas networks, you can then get Solar Victoria will give you some money. And then Victoria will give you rebates through the VEUs, and then you might get STCs. So all of a sudden you could get 4 rebates just to electrify in certain areas of your home, which I think is fantastic.
I didn't know that.
Well, that's the biggest challenge. And the reason why I did this training is because it's, how would people know? And the people who are more likely to be most affected don't necessarily have the knowledge or the literacy of this sort of stuff. So the idea is teach some volunteers how to access the tools so you can sit there at the neighbourhood community centre and actually help someone. Like, let's look at your bill, let's run your house through this little tool that the State Electricity Commission has made, and maybe it can help give you some advice, and you can make yourself a little plan. So the idea is not to enable me to be an expert, it's simply to allow me to show someone where are the tools online, where are the rebates, what could you consider. Let the online tools, the government approved, give you some advice, and then enable them that way, which I think is really cool. And so to come all the way back to why I brought this up, they talk about in Castlemaine, electrification, people will do it for climate in Castlemaine. But if you're going potentially further west or further north, you may not want to talk about the climate at all, because that is a polarized word and weaponized in some of these areas. And what you might want to talk about is just simply cost of living, comfort, etc. It's not about saving the planet, because people actually might think they might be wary of you if you've got that lens to what you're trying to say.
Interesting.
And so I like living in our little area. It's fairly progressive and it's full of smarty pants people, and I really like that. I think Malden, where I am, everyone's 65 or older except for myself and my family.
Sorry.
There's a couple of outliers. But what I like about that, they're all people who lived in Melbourne typically, and they're all real clever. They've lived awesome lives. And now they've all retired to this little, we call it a non-gated town, a little community town, retirement village. And they all volunteer in all of the little activities. So you got these people that used to like be at a professor at a university or whatever it might be, smarty pantsers, volunteering at the bowls club, pouring drinks.
I'll tell you
and
what,
they're just nice people to meet.
That's a wonderful thing, because we know statistically the volunteers are going down and down and down.
Yeah, so it's gone from 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 people.
We noticed that we've got a daughter who's 14 and a son who's going to be 21 next year, but we noticed in the last 2 years of my daughter's time at the primary school, the number of people who volunteered for the primary school to do something, we just went down and down. And the people who were still volunteering were the ones who'd been volunteering
always doing
from
it.
prep. Exactly. Yep. The ones who are going, helping here, doing the gardening, doing that. And it was quite distressing, because there is this, I don't know, this selfishness that seems to have crept into society just a bit. Please.
Well, look, maybe I'm not going to unvalidate that statement.
It's great to hear something like that in Malden.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, what makes the town so like delicious? Again, I'm saying the wrong word.
No,
for
that's
these
a great
things, but
word.
like
That's a great.
You know, like the really nice bits, the bits that make you feel really wealthy and rich, is everything that happens from the volunteering. So it's like the Easter parade or the folk festival or like the Halloween or all these things that happen. They only happen because people volunteer and bust guts to make it happen, and that gives it all the colour and the fun. If you didn't have all the volunteering stuff, the towns would be really boring, right? I'm sure that's the same in Melbourne.
Yeah.
I'm in the CFA in Malden with the fire brigade, and there's probably a dozen people who often will go to fires out of a town of 1,000 people. There's hardly any, and I do wonder how long can the society sustain these volunteering rates with relying on institutions like SES or whatever it might be.
But
what I wanted to say, I didn't get to answer your question. I wonder how much the cost of living crisis has to influence this, because now we need to typically, like the nuclear family used to be kind of one person worked, one person was at home, and you had the family. And I think that no longer exists. And now typically both people work if there's 2 adults in a family.
And they still can't save enough money to buy a house.
That's right. And so then how on earth can I volunteer at the school at 3 o'clock if I got to be at work because we're all broke?
So what you're saying, and it's really interesting you point this out, that what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's not that people's ability and empathy and enthusiasm to volunteer has decreased. It's more that they have less time because they're working their asses off to actually survive.
That's my thoughts around it.
There's cases of, like, for example, women in their 50s who have had a family, they're divorced, separated, they're employed. They can't even get a rental property, live in a bloody car. It's really...
Can I add to this one as well?
Please.
I've got a high horse that's sort of tangentially related to this. Superannuation and HECS, right? So when we've got 2 kids that I love and adore, they're 7 and 1. They're 6 and 1, nearly 7 and 1. My daughter's 7 in my mind. Sorry, Mara. But my wife looked after my kids, right? And she didn't work for a period of time, and I was the single income earner. Now, for my super, and I'm sure everyone knows this because probably everyone does this, you can split your super. And so over 12 months, if my wife had not worked, I can give her 50% of all the money I earn through my super. Great, that makes sense. How good's that, right? But what you can't do it for is HECS debt. And I think, can I swear on this? Because I think it's bullshit. It's such bullshit. So, my wife and I have we had 40 grand HECS debts each. We both went to uni. Lucky us. I had to pay mandatory HECS off in my wages every year before our family could see it. But then I couldn't split that payment to my wife. And then you talked about the separation of a mother who's then separated in their 50s and how vulnerable things can be. They might still have a HECS debt, right? Or, someone in their 40s. So I've paid off my HECS debt through mandatory work repayments. My wife still has 40 grand HECS debt. Now we can pay that off, and we are slowly, but it's after tax. To me, I find it so crazy that I can't put 50% of my mandatory repayments into her as the primary carer because we're a family unit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not isolated people, but there's inequality built into that system that's just stuck there, and I just think it's bullshit.
I think I'm going to be careful here, but I think this ties into the consumerist society that we live in. Let's go back 50, 60 years, whether it's Australia, whether it's Europe. You had communities. Let's go back 100 years. You had a community. And then 50 years, you had an extended family. You had uncles and aunties and grandparents living under the one roof. And then you got to the nuclear family. And then now it's even getting segmented even smaller and smaller. Mm. And at the end of the day, if I live in a house with my grandparents, there's usually only one washing machine, right? But if I go and live in a flat by myself or I live in an apartment with my partner or whatever, I'm generally going to buy one washing machine. So the reality is, from a consumer perspective, you're going to sell more washing machines. You're going to sell more appliances when you break down incrementally into smaller packages of people.
I've never thought about this. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
How inefficient that is. I've often thought the same with like gardening tools. Like imagine if there was a ride-on mower that was shared amongst a street or things like this. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, what a no-brainer, but
it is a no-brainer.
Can't be done. Too hard. Impossible.
but
you know what's better? Everyone having their own mower in their shed. Spending a fortune on it.
For the people who are listening and not watching, that Alistair's severe... that's totally tongue in cheek when he made that comment. But it really is true, and it also ties in with and we get philosophical here, but it also ties in working out very early on the difference between a need and a want, because once you understand what you actually need, those wants they tend to dissipate fairly quickly.
More recently, I was reminded of something. It's like they say. As soon as someone has a health problem, they have no other problems in the world. And like it's sort of similar to what you're talking about there, where everything else gets put into perspective.
It does.
It's like, needs and wants. We talked about this at lunchtime. Shelter and like housing stability, right? That's being eroded. We've got our structural systems are so broken. Increased rental class. The people who rent are super vulnerable. You sort of have no power. It's super messed up. I was listening to a podcast talking about it was the welfare of children. It was a report done recently from the Minderoo Foundation, and it was said it was like 1 in 5 children had worries about housing security, and it's like these are 10-year-old children, right? And like to me, that is super messed up. These children should not need to have these worries, but they have them because of these huge structural layers that we've built into homes or housing investments, or however we want to think about it.
I think you're dead right, and I think it's because. Well, one of the reasons is because the home, probably in the last 25, 30 years, it has become something else. It's not just a home, it's an investment. Mm. And then people go, I'm going to buy this house because...
Your home's my investment.
Right? Well said. No, but you know what I'm saying. It's a different mentality, and now we're
It's a wealth creation tool.
Well, when I was young, I was at uni, and then I went work, did whatever, all of that sort of stuff. There was the classic scenario was one person worked in the family, right? One person worked. Sometimes there's two people working, but there was one person working. Kids, they could still save. They're renting, they could still save for a deposit for a house. So the proportion of their wage that went towards rent and then when they bought a house, a mortgage, was so much smaller than it is now. In a lot of cases, it's way over 25, 30%. In some cases, it's 80, 90% of the family's income. Hence, one person loses their job, buy house. So that's something very, very wrong. And
I agree. This is total segue. The solar sharer offer that was announced by the government, which is the free energy for 3 hours during the middle of the day.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. I don't think it's not a law or legislation yet. I think it's an idea, but I think it's probably going to come. Whilst it might not be perfect, and there's probably 100 things wrong with it, I don't really know. But what I love about it is it's one of the first policies I've seen where it's like, if I'm a renter in a unit complex, I can actually benefit from that. And like, fantastic. More of that, please.
I totally agree. And because for years and years, renters didn't or couldn't benefit from solar. going one step further, why don't we implement a system that they've got in a lot of the European countries where the renter is locked into a 10 or 15 year period, they have a fixed rent. Like the ownership, home ownership in Europe traditionally was kept.
It's low, right?
It's very low.
And renters have rights.
And the thing is, because at the end of the day, the only difference between renting, paying a mortgage and owning your house outright is, well, there's no difference because you're a temporary custodian until you die, right? But there's a security component.
Yeah, that's
when I own something that the big bad wolf landlord can't kick me out.
And so if people had that same feeling of security with a 5-year lease, they'd have the same feeling.
Absolutely.
They could invest elsewhere.
Correct. They could invest elsewhere. And of course, still spending money within the economy because it's all about, that kind of thing.
Buying washing machines, you were saying.
all those
batteries.
All those treadmills that you see on every hard road.
There's actually, throw your treadmill away, the new product is the walking pad. And so if you have a treadmill, that's obsolete now. That's no good. The walking pad's what you need. They're like the mini treadmill. They fold up. They go into your bed. I feel like it's, how you get the same product and put it under a new label. That's the walking pad.
Oh my God.
Oh, I want one as well.
Oh, no, you don't. Oh my God.
I have a friend who's Dutch and she lives, we talked about the Netherlands before, but yeah, like 5-year lease is totally normal. People can paint the walls. In Australia, you'd be worried about putting up a
blue
picture
tack,
hook, right?
Yeah.
That's absurd. Like what nonsense that is.
Oh, it's funny, when I was studying multiple shared houses, probably lived in about 10 or so shared houses over
the good old days.
The good old days when you could be, getting off study. I was vegetarian for 1 year. Girlfriend was, but I was vegetarian because I was too poor. The dog was the only thing that ate meat, chicken carcasses. But you could survive, but now you can't. And I do worry. I worry personally for my children without financial help.
Are you planning for them to stay and live with you for longer? As opposed to this, you're 18 or 20, hit the road, Jack.
That's a good question. Without revealing my son, we kicked him out about 6 months ago in the nicest possible way. He's living 5 minutes down the road, by the way. Studying full-time engineering, and he's working, and he's pretty lucky. He's one of those lucky people, right? Everything falls into place. But we did that so he could understand that living with other people who are not your family, you have to be diplomatic, and there's going to be shit that hits the fan.
There's a growth aspect there.
Thank you, Alistair. Yes. So, but we do have a fair whack of land, as I mentioned, and we do envisage having that land segmented, not necessarily under like subdividing, but having parts of this land where our son and daughter live in their own little place, like fully off grid, but maybe connected to the grid if they wanted to be, because we've got the land to do that. That is a plan, but best laid plans, mice and men and all that stuff.
I like my sister-in-law. She's like, I don't want to push my kids out of the home. Like she's thinking about how can I make where I live a safe space for them for as long as they need, knowing how hard it is.
Yes.
And like if you want to save for a house deposit, or if you want to try and do these things, I don't know how people do it nowadays. It's very tricky.
It's really tricky.
Maybe share houses all have bunk beds now, so you have 2 people in every bedroom.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of overseas students who are living like that, where they're going into small apartments or houses where there ain't no lounge room. The lounge room's got a curtain down the centre. One part of the lounge room is one person's bedroom, the other. Even bedrooms having that sort of segregation with a curtain or a blanket or whatever, and it goes on. It's quite, Hey, but when you're young, you can cope with these things.
It's part of the fun.
It's part of the fun.
So we did put up a segment in our house and then put an extra bedroom in, and I had friends who put up a wardrobe to do the same thing. You're a student, you want that $40 for a sack of goon. Like priorities, right? I'll sleep in the living room if it means I have beer money.
Never a truer word. I love it. Now, so you've worked for this. You were working for this solar company, right? And you were there for a very long.
Yep.
You were very long. You were there. Well, Kohler Solar.
Yep.
How long were you at Kohler for?
It felt like ages. I was there for maybe 2.5 years, but I was so lucky in that time. I got to do almost all of the bits. So I started off in that sales pod. I did it for 12 months. And then I moved into operations, and 1 week into that, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? It was like so stressful. I was like, oh, it could have been easy. I could have been in the sales pod and this was like fine, right? And it got way better after that first week, but it was hell. It was so stressful because we were doing like 50 jobs a week, which is quite a lot, or at least it felt like quite a lot. Yeah, it was like 5. Yeah, no, it was like, yeah, it was quite a job, quite a lot. You know, we had 5 or 6 teams plus subcontractors. There was a lot of products moving. That was a heap of fun. And then again, I talked about how when people resign, opportunities arise. Yes. And so the person who did the commercial stuff quit and opened up a solar company the next day as a competitor. And I think this is what everyone does. And so then I got to do the commercial stuff. So at that place, I did the operations and then I got to do some of the, and that's when I first met Greenwood. Would be me, you know, I'd be calling up Greenwood saying, I need a grid connection cubicle tomorrow.
Yes.
And I would say, yes, of course. And then, 3 weeks later we'd have it.
That's what I was going to say. Never happened tomorrow. It's too long.
No,
the grid safe, which now they call interface protection.
That's the one, the interface
not
protection.
Secondary protection anymore.
Thank you.
It's 4777.1, 2024, yeah.
So I did that. And then, I talked about how I got my first solar job where I knew someone and that helped. I feel like that helped me get the job. What ended up happening is a person who used to work at Kohler Solar but did not work there when I worked there, but I was introduced through colleagues, he used to have this job that I had at the Smart Energy Council and he'd moved on. So there was a vacancy. He said, you should apply for it. You'd be good at it, something. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I read the application. I was like, I don't know about that. It's a sales job. I've done that. I'm doing engineering now. But then, you sit on it and then by the end of the weekend, I was like, oh, no, actually, I really do want that job. So then I applied for it and I went through all the processes and I assume I got the job on my own merit. But I always assume, but having that little friend connection to sort of get me in there helped me. And then that was 4.5 years ago.
Wow.
And lots has happened since then. I think lots has happened.
What's your official title now?
My official title is
I better to get it back up on the screen.
I wanted to say something cheeky. It's not deputy CEO. No, it's
the
installer and consumer energy engagement manager. So if I shorten it, I say I'm an engagement manager. And like, what does that really mean? It's like, well, I live in the installer and consumer energy world and space. So my day-to-day is speaking to our members who are companies that are active in that area. So there might be manufacturers selling residential batteries in this space.
Yeah.
There might be solar installers working in this space, large solar retailers, service providers, anyone who's interested in this area. Typically it's in the SRES kind of space. And my job is to service those members, look after them and make sure they're getting all of our deliverables as a membership organisation and to listen to them. But then it's also to become more of an expert in the policy. So what's happening in the state and the federal level that affects this cohort of people. And so the Cheaper Home Battery Scheme is a perfect example of this, where I'm expected to know and understand this very well so I can articulate that to our members. And then the last bit, of course, is then to bring more people into the fold, make sure I'm telling that story to other companies and invite them in. And so that's sort of my world at the moment, which I'm really enjoying. Before that, I was the sales manager for a couple of years, for 3 or 4 years. And I did a lot of the same stuff, but having words matter. Like having a different title changes things in so many different ways. And so it's quite good.
I want to talk about that you're a certified, I've got my notes, is certified passive house designer and blower door tester. Can you explain what that is? Yeah.
I'll start with the blower door tester.
Yeah.
It's all to do with how do you tell how airtight a building is. This was something where I got to do it in Canberra in this little startup business. It's super fun. So overseas, when they build buildings, it's very, very common, particularly in some of the colder climates, to build buildings that are comfortable. So they want to build buildings that are comfortable from the outset. And they realize things like insulation and draft proofing are really quite important. And so they've developed ways of doing performance verification for this. So a blower door is where you'll get a house and you'll close all the windows and close all the doors, and you'll normally go to the front door or the back door and you open up and you put a fake frame in that comes with the little kit, and it's got this giant fan, and you literally suck the air out of the house. And you can measure the pressure inside the house and outside the house. You can measure the speed of the fan and you can know how much air is going through it.
Right.
And when you work out the surface area of the building or the building shell, you can actually work out the permeability of the envelope. And it becomes very important because when you're trying to meet very high efficiencies, you need to have a really airtight home. And in Australia, houses are famously
shit.
Yeah, not airtight. Drafty is the word people
Yes,
use.
yes.
And so, people often go, my house is so uncomfortable, but it's a 7-star house or a 6-star house. I have insulation. What can I do? And I would always say, go get a blower door test done, because as soon as you do that, you'll start finding all of the cracks that are causing the draft, that are making you feel uncomfortable, and just get them caulked. Like, do something. There's low-hanging fruit everywhere. The passive house is really interesting. And I think of my old mentor who taught me about this. He would talk about a house as an architectural esky. And so it's the concept of, if you want to build a passive house, the idea is you need very little heating or cooling,
Yes.
or no heating or cooling.
Yes.
And the idea is you can do that. It can be done. And you don't necessarily, it's different to solar passive. In solar passive often relies on a lot of thermal mass and diurnal day-night cycles to sort of capture the heat during the day,
Yep.
warm over the night, all that sort of stuff. But a passive house is no, just have a great barrier to the outside regardless of what's going on. So it's smart windows, good external shade to manage your solar irradiance, phenomenal insulation, great air tightness, and also they talk about thermal bridges. And so that's managing conduction through your walls or through your floor or all these sorts of things. I love doing that. It was super interesting, and I like combining it with my off-grid accreditation, because off-grid systems historically, they're very expensive, and the biggest dollar figure in an off-grid system is the batteries. Batteries are expensive. And then when you I think of a house and you're doing a load profile of a house, how much energy do you need in your house from a day to day? People don't realize that up to 50% or easily 50% of their energy needs might be to do with heating or cooling. It's well, imagine if you could eliminate a majority of that. All of a sudden you can half your energy load, which may mean you can then half your battery bank, which means then you could save a whole heap of money in your whole off-grid system. So by getting smart at the outset with smart building design and thermal envelope, you can then save a fortune on your off-grid system, and then maybe that actually pays for itself. So to me, it actually works. So it complements each other so beautifully.
Yeah, look, I'll say something. You might disagree with me on this one here. My issue with a completely, let's say, airtight house is that you have to use mechanical ventilation to achieve the same thing that vapor permeability is achieved within, say, a straw bale or a mud brick home. In other words, the ability of the actual material to actually maintain the correct humidity and air quality within inside the house. When you've got these sealed up homes, you must use a system that has adequate air exchange per hour to maintain air quality.
You know a bit about it.
I
love earth ships, and I love straw bale. I love rammed earth. Those things are beautiful. They're such beautiful building materials, and you can make awesome houses with them. We used to talk about this with people all the time. It's but I will suffocate, if my house is airtight. Firstly, you're not building a spaceship, right? It's not totally airtight. Even if I say my house is airtight, it still has some leakiness. It's fine. The second thing is most houses, at least most houses I've seen, they have these things called windows. They're fantastic. They let light in, and even some of them are really fancy ones. You can actually open them. And so you can open them and you can let air in.
Cross ventilation, all of that.
Ventilation, right? It's the great thing is though, wouldn't you love it? How about if the weather's terrible, you can manage when the air gets in and the air doesn't get in? Oh, you can close the window. Oh, brilliant. How good does that sound, right? As opposed to, if it's windy, you will get some air exchange because it's a drafty house. It's no good. I mean, you touched on it though, the mechanical ventilation. And I agree. I prefer the absence of systems is better. To need buzzing tools all the time, that's not so great.
Yeah.
But the ventilation systems, the energy recovery ventilation systems or the heat recovery ventilation systems, they're brilliant. They are so clever. Most Australians have never heard of them. But, the concept is I have a little extraction fan in my bathroom or whatever it is. It sucks the air out of my house, takes away the humidity or whatever it is, but it brings in fresh air into another part of my house.
Yep.
And it's so clever, it puts it through a little heat exchanger, which effectively means it can transfer the hot air or the cold air, the energy to that to pre-warm it or pre-cool it. So you can precondition air that comes into your house. I like that because that can be phenomenally efficient and clever. But I do agree with you. It's you just want to open a window. I was very lucky that when I went on a holiday in America, I went to the Earthship headquarters.
Wow.
In Utah or somewhere like that. And
we'll explain to people in a short time what an Earthship
the tires and all that.
Yeah.
My God, amazing. But it blew my mind. I loved it. That's just clever design, face the sun, use the materials you have, build the greenhouse, make it comfortable. Every house should be like that.
So back to this air thing, and then I agree. Look, any improvement on the shitty houses we've got. I mean, our brick veneer, a lot of people say should be reverse brick veneer, and you might get some additional benefit. The way I see it, the correct use of thermal mass and insulation and those correct ratios, and not building the same house in Hobart as you build in bloody Darwin as they do, is the correct way to go. And not only for the comfort, but it's also reducing energy expenditure, really important. The issue with homes, apart from the natural built homes, is there's apart from the quality of air, of oxygen, CO2, etc. There's also volatile organic compounds, VOCs, and this is a bit of an issue as well. In any home build, but I totally agree with you that we need to build better homes in Australia. Full stop. Our homes are a laughing stock.
And we know better.
But we do know better.
It's not hard. Everyone else does it. It can be done. We should just do it. And if it means the building code needs to get that little bit better, that's great. You talked about volatiles or whatever.
Yeah,
it is.
volatile.
Gas cooktops. They release all sorts of particulates into your air,
Absolutely.
Right? It's unreal that people are so blasé about the impact or safety of that subtly that could just be having on your family and your children. It's like, wow, get rid of your gas cooktop as soon as you can.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and it just reminds me of what we talked about in the beginning, that systems engineering approach, that interdependence, build better houses, and by doing that, you're reducing your energy expenditure, and by doing that, you're warming the planet less. I just wanted to ask you one thing, though. What's your view on the fact that we're all moving towards these electric cars and electric everything, and I'm talking not just Australia, but I'm talking about in China and India. You've got this burgeoning middle class that'll, by the way, will suddenly all want air conditioners. What's that going to look like in regards to the impact on the electrical grid?
I was talking.
Sorry.
Just a little question.
Yeah, just a little question.
Oh, look, I don't know, but if I was to guess, I would assume our energy needs and consumption will only ever go up and up and up and up. And it's probably why I think we need to be smart in efficiency where we can, because I think we have an insatiable demand for energy. And we're yet to start really creating all our food out of electricity, but that'll come in our dystopian universe that we're heading.
Don't say that.
But the electrification of transport is huge, is huge. It doesn't matter how many people don't realize, but if the equivalent amount of energy that your car might consume in fuel or whether it's petrol or electric, whatever it is, dwarfs what your house uses. And so if you drive a little bit, that's actually where your energy consumption is. Your house is almost trivial. So as we electrify all of your cars and all of the trucks and the trains and the planes and the boats and the everything, we'll double, triple, quintuple. I don't know what it will be, but our energy demands will only increase, which means we better get smart about how we consume it and store it and manage it.
And do you think, like with the renewable energy industry, do you think we're a bit more, I like to think that we're a bit more proactive than other industries. We can sort of see from experience what is going to happen, and hopefully we're putting things in place quickly enough to avert what may be.
I've wondered this. It's like, we're an industry. Are we any different to any other industry? And I do like to think that we should, as an industry, hold ourselves to the highest standard. And I don't know if you talked about this with Darren about the stewardship and recycling and all of this, but
yes,
it's so important, right? Like we can't destroy the world by saving the world. Like that's silly. And so we need all the renewable energy we can as fast as we can, as much as we can, but we have to be sympathetic with all of this other sort of stuff. And we live in 2025. Information is at our fingertips. We can and should do as best as we can, right?
Absolutely.
I definitely think so.
No, I think maybe I like to think we are a little bit better than other industries, but maybe that's just false pride or lack of.
I reckon, like any industry, there'd be some sections where you bang on and some sections where you're wildly off. Like, who are the people? There are some, famously, I'm pretty sure it was the solar industry that got cold calls banned in Victoria under Solar Victoria, under all these schemes, right?
I still get them.
Yeah, no, me too. And I enjoy trying to get a quote from them. But Like, there are areas that are not so good, right? And, you hear all the horrible stories about vulnerable people being ripped off, but that's from any industry.
Exactly.
And we're not exempt to that.
No, of course
And
not.
I think that's just people.
Yeah, no,
We're humans and fallible.
Absolutely. But as we talked about before, we can all agree there's when it comes to renewables and solar, there's this massive resource sitting up in the sky, pumping its rays down, and we'd be silly not to capture that, utilise it, and store it. And that leads to the whole battery. We were talking off camera about this. I want you to explain at the moment what's happening with batteries from a domestic and small commercial perspective. What's available to end users and installers?
I would say everything has changed. Like the whole narrative. What happened, and it's what happened in solar and it's happened to batteries is solar used to be expensive and people bought what they could afford. Then solar got super, super cheap and it became buy as much as you can, fill your roof. People would be spending 10 grand, they'd be getting the largest system they can. The narrative became, you want to do this, no one ever complains about a system being too big. You might have had 6.5 kilowatts before, now the average is 10. You'd put 15 if you could. It's just like you're only getting more electrical appliances, maybe you're electrifying your car. Your energy needs are always going up. No one will ever regret it. Prices are going down. So it used to be get solar, get solar, get solar. And the whole conversation in industry then often went down to payback periods. They would say you can get solar, might be 4 year payback period, 5 years, in some cases even less. So it became, absolutely do this. And then people would ask, should I get a battery as well? And often the industry, and I mean the solar retailers or the solar installers, that most people would probably say no, and they'd probably talk their client or customer out of it. And they would say, no, look, I personally think batteries are probably pretty dear, even though they're not spending their own money. It's their customer's money.
Right.
You can't tell a customer what's expensive. That's a personal question.
Good point.
I think. It's a really important one, right? Because I used to not be able to sell batteries to people because I used to think they were expensive. But I'm like, wait, it's not my money. If someone else has heaps of money, maybe it's not expensive. Anyway, that's a tangent, right? But I think a lot of solar installers would be like, put all the money in the solar, get lots of solar. Batteries are getting cheaper. They're getting better. Wait. And so some people put some batteries in and there was a little bit of a growth there. But then what happened is the government came out with the cheap home battery scheme and the industry, it is taken off. And so all of us, it's STCs for batteries for people who are in that world. So it's a pretty simple mechanism. It's an upfront rebate that you can get from your solar retailer when you install a battery. And it was designed to be about 30% off a battery system. Now some battery systems, that's true. You'll get $372 per kilowatt hour or whatever it is off your battery, and that might be 30%. But through innovation and through maturity of the markets and clever businesses, there are obviously batteries that are cheaper than the more expensive brands. And so all of a sudden you can now get, I get the Facebook quotes. I assume everyone does. You can get a $6,000 battery system with 40 kilowatt hours of storage installed in Victoria.
What?
Yeah, unbelievable. Once you click one Facebook ad, you're going to get 4,000 of them. But so what we're seeing is anyone who ever wanted a battery is trying to desperately get a battery right now. Anyone who was thinking about a battery is now being told by all of the solar retailers now is the best time to ever get a battery. And then I think it's one of those things where it's the early adopters and the early middle are all jumping on it. And so now we're seeing with our members, with solar retailers, all good operators are booked in 3, 4, 5 months in advance. They've got people knocking on the door begging, can I please get a battery? When can I get it? Put me in the queue.
And this is the domestic.
This is in the domestic space because of the cheaper home battery scheme.
Right.
The industry's just taken off. And it's been so popular that we've heard that if you were selling just a standard solar, a string inverter, which is just the old solar inverter, no batteries, they don't sell anymore. They don't move. If you had them, if you're a warehouse filled with them, you're sitting on them because there's no appetite for them. I need a hybrid inverter with a battery right now, please, or just the battery. And so we've actually seen solar sales drop, string inverters drop because everyone's doing this backlog of batteries. I think slowly now we're starting to see a recovery now where it's like, okay, we're selling new systems with new solar and batteries. Yeah. And then there's still that retrofit market. So this has unlocked a huge amount of capital from mums and dads into their homes for home energy storage, which should be a great thing.
Well, what do you mean? Should
next, please. Well, I mean, I don't want to make any kind of like assumptions based off. We're 4 months into the program, right? Like,
it's early days.
How can we tell?
Yeah, of course.
Go fast forward 2 years, and we're looking back. Will this have been a really clever play? I think it will be. I think it will be good because we know as our grid is transitioning to a renewables grid, we're getting more variable renewable resources. Time of use is very important. We've got a duck curve. We've got all these challenges. We need more storage. Everyone knows that we need more storage, and we're trying to invest in more storage. And what's happening is at a utility level, that's slow and it's challenging, and it takes a long time to get utility projects up. What we've seen is we're getting gigawatts of home energy storage being installed by mums and dads overnight, literally overnight. And so the speed at which energy storage is being deployed, I think, is incredible. Where I am excited for us to get to, or I think we are not today, where we need to get, is getting all those batteries playing into the grid. So they will.
I want to ask you about this, the whole virtual power plant kind of scenario. Can you explain that to the people listening?
Oh golly, no. I'll have a go. I can explain a little bit about what I know, which is not so much. Look, I mean, virtual power plants. It's how can you get your battery to help participate more in the energy grid, at the simplest of levels. But effectively, it's an energy retailer wants to take control of maybe 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 batteries, put them all together digitally, and then that might become a virtual coal-fired power station in terms of equivalent energy.
Wow.
Turn those batteries on, push energy in or push energy out, help play in the wholesale market network, which typically mums and dads don't do.
Yep.
Now, I think VPP adoption is fairly low in the cheaper home battery scheme. I think it's around the 10%. The figures vary a little bit. Someone installing storage is good, right, by itself, because they can help manage their own demand and their loads on the grid. But as we get more and more people into that virtual power plant place, I think more tools become unlocked to the retailers and to the DNSPs, and I think we'll actually see more positive changes on a large NEM system level, which will be great for the grid and for ultimately for our costs.
Yeah, wow.
We pay for all this infrastructure, right?
We do.
If there's a need where the AEMO is the Australian Electric Market Operator, and they're the ones that can turn off your inverter if there's not enough load.
The backstop.
Yeah, emergency backstop. Yep. I think it's pretty famous in Victoria for many reasons, but it exists for good reasons, right? Energy stability, people want the lights on. I also don't want to think about why the lights are on. I want them to work, right? So we have clever people who work in organisations, and so they have rules, obviously. The more batteries we get installed, hopefully we get to less events where there's a minimum system load where we need to intervene. And as more people get into VPPs, that should be more additional tools to these players to be able to help the grid work most effectively. And the more effectively we can run it, the cheaper it should be for everybody. And that's a good thing for everyone else. So even though the government is subsidising cheaper home batteries now, that money actually might be saved elsewhere in future spend on upgrading power lines through country Victoria or things like this, interconnectors that we all talk about that no one wants.
Do you think retailers may start offering to customers who don't have batteries or may not even have solar batteries as part of a deal? So
Yes, I definitely think so. I mean, look, I also think would be selling me a car, right? If I'm an energy retailer, I'm in the business of selling you electricity. So I want you to buy as much electricity as possible. So I'm surprised you can't lease I think you can with some retailers now. Lease me your electric vehicle. Help me electrify my home. Lease me the solar and battery system. And there are some companies and members of ours that do exactly that model, which are really quite successful. But it just makes sense. You will be encouraging me to consume more energy. So it'll be good for you. You'll get the return from me.
Yeah,
but just going back to the VPP thing,
please.
There's not a high adoption of VPPs. And so, you could argue that perhaps the retail offering is not attractive enough. Maybe that's the case, and that's why not everyone's doing a VPP. I do wonder, and whenever I talk to a solar installer, I ask them about VPPs, and most of them say the really similar thing to what people used to say about batteries, where people say, not worth worrying about. Don't worry about VPPs.
Because
they don't believe in it.
Or they don't understand it.
Could be both.
Yeah.
So don't understand it, understand it and don't think it's good value, or any other number of reasons. But I actually think they're a critical cohort because I think they're the influencers, right? They are the ones talking to the mums and dads. So
maybe they have to get on Instagram or
they
something.
They need to, if I was a retailer and I wanted my VPP to take off, you want the solar installers loving your product because they're the ones that when they install their battery or have sold the battery to you, they're like, great, now you turn on the VPP. And the mum and dad will trust what they say. And so if that person has said, don't do a VPP, waste of time, then they'll be like, great, I won't bother.
you hit the nail on the head here, and it comes down to this. In my experience, is that the electricians get very loyal to that. No electricians are loyal to a solar panel. As long as it's tier 1, good quality, fine. They'll swap around based on cents per watt. But inverters, it takes a long time to learn a particular inverter, its intricacies, its commissioning.
And to trust its tech support.
Exactly. We were talking about this at lunchtime. Tech support, the quality of tech support is really, it's really important. So if they have to actually add another string to the bow where they go, I'm going to look at this as a total energy management strategy, because that's effectively what it is. Customer, solar, batteries, VPP, et cetera, I've got to learn extra stuff. Do I have the time? It's hard enough for me to work out the comms and the commissioning of it through my smartphone, and now you want me to set up a VPP? I need to be educated.
At the same time, when they're the busiest they've ever been. Right? So it's the perfect storm of that's a later problem because I can delay that problem.
Right.
Or, I can push that one down because I need to focus on cash flow. I need to focus on doing my 2 installations per day. I need to think about my Christmas shutdown. It's
wow.
That's the world that you need to operate in and exist in, right?
Yes.
VPPs are just that's a great fluffy thing on the side. Maybe.
Yeah,
and
I
want that to change, and that will change, I think. But that's, I think, the situation we're currently in.
And as an installer who's going to be listening to this, what do they do? Do they email the Smart Energy Council and go, hey, is there any resources out there for me to learn about this stuff? Because I really don't know where to go.
I'm really keen. We've got our major conference and exhibition, Smart Energy, in Sydney in May coming up. And it's quite timely because New South Wales is getting the emergency backstop starting 1st of July in a tiered sort of structured way. I want us to actually get people in that room and have the people who offer the products, and there's a few really popular VPP companies, and then there's everyone else. I want them to get them all there and sort of, sell it to us, right? Get us on board. Make sure, and there's of course what's in it for me. Me as the solar installer, it's going to take up more of my time. Maybe they'll call me if they have a problem instead of you. Where is my trailing commission? Whatever it should be. It'll all come down to finance, right?
Good point.
And I think there are some retailers looking at that. So I think we'll see lots of interesting things happen in that VPP space, particularly now that we've got 137,000 home batteries or whatever it is. We're getting 1,000 new batteries a day. The market is growing. We've already doubled what we had in home energy storage, I think, in just this last 3 months. So the market is now going to be there.
Wow.
And so it should, bring it on. Let's go.
Is there a problem with shortage of stock with batteries that you've heard, or is it pretty okay?
I think it's better than what it was.
Right,
I don't know if it's fully alleviated. It may be in some areas. When the rebate first began, stock was a huge problem, and that was because it takes time to make things, right?
Yes.
You can't just can't say I need a triple.
You can't go. There they are. Yeah.
It is. I was very fortunate. I was invited over by a manufacturer to China just 3 weeks ago, and we got to. They hosted a global sort of solar conference at their headquarters. And they talked about all the different markets globally. And Australia was equally the largest market that they had globally for energy storage. That's how significant we've become.
So in a population of 26, 27 million. Unbelievable.
That's how huge how significant this cheap home battery scheme is. They are, and they're not alone in this. So heaps of manufacturers locally and overseas are scaling up big time to capitalize on this enormous growth in our market, which is fantastic.
Well, you saw it at All Energies, this year. Oh my gosh. I thought there was lots of batteries last year. There's just tons of
Wasn't that just everything?
It was
everything
just,
everywhere.
It was just...
I had a colleague, sorry I interrupted you, had been to old tech conferences back in, the .com days or whenever it was. He said, this is just like an old tech conference where there's just money everywhere. There's big, everything's extra.
Right. That's really interesting that he says it. And I sort of got that impression myself. I have to admit, when I go to All Energies, I walk around for the first hour like a chicken without its head. I'm like, what? I don't know what I'm doing.
You're looking for the merch.
Well, we were doing some filming as well, but I have to admit, I collect a lot of pens for my wife who loves stationery, and I've got pretty bad handwriting, so a good pen helps me a lot as well. But yeah, it was batteries
Yeah.
everywhere.
2-3 years ago, it was nothing like that. It has changed so quickly. Every stand has a battery.
Every stand has a battery. And it's interesting too now that a lot of people see in the olden day, or not that long ago, when it came to, let's say, off-grid, which is a smaller component of the total market, but also a backup scenario. We're going, the old transformer inverters with their surge capacity, this is the only way to go. Whereas now people have taken a different approach and gone, no, we can use transformerless, and I won't say brands, but maybe I will, and we'll just double the capacity.
Just parallel it.
Yeah, we'll just double the capacity, get a bigger model, so we can cope after you've done your proper load audit. Thank you. And gone, we can cope with those surges when someone's got the vacuum on or the washing machine or whatever. Or, of course, you make sure that you're servicing a dedicated load in the case of a backup when it comes to batteries on the grid. And we were talking about this off camera before about, how need to be pretty technical to sell properly these battery systems.
Off-grid battery systems?
Well,
because
no,
on-grid, I don't think you have to be.
Well, no, I think you. Well,
I challenge your hypothesis.
I think because with on-grid batteries, it still comes down to trying to get a sale. So there's a lot of undersized batteries going in.
I would agree, and I would say there's probably lots of oversized batteries going in.
Absolutely, and that's because of the rebates available.
There'd be batteries flying off the shelf where someone's called up and said, hey, there's a rebate, I'd like a battery. And they'd say, fantastic, that's $6,500. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And I say, fantastic. And that'd be the end of the conversation. They'll end up on crap solar. But, this would be happening all the time. Versus you'd call other companies and they'll say, let's talk about everything you've got. How much solar do you have?
And guess what? No one's read the fine print that particular battery that they've bought or that they've installed in the customer's house needs to be charged up to 95% once a week to maintain the warranty.
And if you don't, you're void.
That's it.
I've gone through these processes because I'm very interested,
I bet you are.
Personally and professionally.
Yes.
I click the Facebook ads and I enter my details, and I've had people call me. And I had one solar company. Do you have solar? Yes. Do you own your house? Yes. Fantastic. Now we can give you your quote. It was unreal. I had only a single site visit out of all. Everyone else was like, send us a photo of your switchboard, maybe some photos of where you think you want your battery to go. And then I got a rubbery quote and off we went. Like, the level of detail in that area of the market is non-existent. I'm getting, you could save up to $3,500. And I'm like, right. The legislation says you actually do need to say estimated savings or a payback period. Like, that's in the rules.
Wow.
But I actually think compliance in that area is just non-existent.
Whoa. Hey, can I ask are you allowed to say who the battery company was overseas that you went to in China?
I assume so. Goodway Australia.
Huge.
It was their 15th anniversary. I was a little bit embarrassed. I thought it was the 15-year anniversary of Goodway Australia, and it wasn't. And so I went there thinking there'd be 20 people there. There was 400 people there. It blew my mind. It was all of the key partners from all around the world. But they took us to their facilities and saw the manufacturing. That was good. But we're talking about building integrated photovoltaics earlier outside. Now, that was cool. They took us to these little test buildings that they build, little houses, where they put all of their building integrated products in it. And so we got to see, of course, the EV chargers connected to the solar carport. That's great. That's very fun. But then they had the things like the solar louvers, solar balustrades.
Wow.
They had structural solar panels that just looked like a wall material. It was stuff I'd never seen before, but I was like, there's an actual solar solution for everything here. I was blown away. I was very impressed.
Wow, do you think, I don't know what they do now with these display homes in Australia, but wouldn't it be great if you had a display home that has the built-in PVs, it has the EV charging, it has the electric hot water, it has a dashboard, which seems to be the holy grail for everyone.
We saw a lot of dashboards in China.
I bet.
Massive LED screens. They look like you're walking to something out of James Bond.
Yeah, wow.
So good.
But I think, is there opportunity for,
Well, you're referring to people's showrooms, I think. Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
you know how you go into a housing estate.
Yeah, you can see a new house being built. This is whatever it is home.
Yeah, you tend... I haven't walked into one for many years, but you go past and you go, oh, maybe they are doing it. I don't know. Maybe they are, but I don't think they are. It's more like, well, this is a new house, and the display home has always got 6 or 7 coats of paint on, where the one you buy might have one if you're lucky. But I just think maybe it's an opportunity for the.
I definitely think it is. I've not thought about it, but you're right. Like the top manufacturers that are out vying for number one spot, they should put all of their products in all of these display homes.
Absolutely,
it's a no-brainer.
It
the new build market's probably not as quick as the retrofit market at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
So you kind of almost need it. I don't want to stay on the shelves of Bunnings, but like, where do you capture people?
Yeah, right. That's.
Some companies are quite clever where they'll donate a bunch of products to a local sports group or a charity or a community group, and then do marketing and buyback through that local community. I think that's a really clever model because, gift something to a small sporting facility, everyone becomes familiar with the product, gets social license, and I believe you can certainly make profit out of like those models.
I think it's definitely effective. Where we live is almost classed as regional. Like we're in the Dandenong Ranges, and one of the common expressions is, "Oh, have you been? When was the last time you were down the mountain?" Like going into Ferntree Gully, completely different from up where I live. And there's the local sporting clubs have a lot of local sponsors. It might be the local restaurant or the local electrician. I think that's a really great idea, which leads me on to community and community batteries. Give us are you involved in a community battery or?
Oh, I don't know what I can say now. I'm not involved in any community batteries. About 2 years ago, Malden, my little town where I live, was getting a community battery. I think we're getting one now, maybe tomorrow. We're getting one soon. It's been coming for a while.
Wow.
I think by the end of this year, we'll get a so-called community battery. Look, I get torn up about this sort of stuff because, the one that we're getting, a DNSP is getting money from the government to install a battery that will live in front of the meter on their assets.
AusNet services?
No, it's PowerCore where I am.
Oh,
I'm in a PowerCore region.
Right.
But I kind of, when I talk to people about it, I sort of say it's a community battery in the same sense as the power pole out the side of my house is a community power pole. Or the transformer down the street is a community transformer. Because that's what it is. It's a bit of electrical infrastructure owned by a DNSP. To me, that's it.
But isn't it there for one of its function in the case of a storm or fire emergency that it's a...
No.
Oh.
So, this is where I have a beef with it, really. So, it's not a microgrid. Oh. A community battery by itself is not a microgrid. I would like it, and if you're listening, can you just put a PowerPoint on it? Just something, right? If there's a blackout and we lose connection to our whole town, maybe the whole town doesn't need backup power, but wouldn't it be great if you had an EV charger or a couple of power points hooked up to it? We could all go to the community battery and plug in our little
Well, that's
phones.
what we've got where I am in Monbulk. Yeah,
that'd be great. No, they tell us if you're to make it a microgrid, it's much more complicated. You need to add a whole heap more infrastructure to actually isolate the grid and make it work, right? It gets complicated. This, to me, it's another asset on the grid, and maybe the grid needs more energy storage. That's fine, but I actually don't think you should greenwash it or community wash it by calling it a community battery.
Because it ain't no community battery.
It's just infrastructure in your community, or at least these ones are. Now there might be others. I love the idea of the library getting a battery system installed that then islands the library during a bushfire, and
that's what happens in Monbulk.
So to me, that's fantastic. To me, that's a community battery. That's smart. That's clever. These ones are I don't quite see. It's too intangible. It's just a bit of infrastructure. And at the end of the day, these are all subsidised by federal funding. So I sort of are they? You're not getting maximum kilowatt hours per dollar. So why? You'd be better off actually not doing any of those, putting more funding into the cheap home battery scheme, where you're then getting $2 or $3 from mums and dads for every dollar the government spends.
Yeah, right. It's a really interesting way of looking at it. I want to go back to the whole residential side of things and the potential power if more and more people adopt these batteries from this VPP perspective. It really seems that it's a huge asset, isn't it? And one thing I mentioned at lunchtime about, the distributors don't have to spend as much on their, dare I say, decaying infrastructure. But it's not decaying, right? But they must, they're spending less because batteries are being bought by...
That should be the goal. At the end of the day, whilst governments might own the DNSPs, it's typically not our government that owns the DNSPs. So it's, we pay interest on all of this infrastructure. We pay for all this infrastructure and then we pay interest on top of it. It's in our interest to minimize the unnecessary spend. And so getting clever with this stuff it's in all of our interests. It all comes out of our taxes.
Yes.
So yes is the answer, absolutely. And they talk about the electricity grid. The majority of the costs that 50% of your bill goes into connection charges, right? So I pay a supply charge. It's $1 a day or whatever. it is.
Yeah.
50% of that goes into your DNSPs, the poles and wires, all of this sort of stuff, right? Which is huge. It's like the actual cost of electricity is like 10% of it or something. It's quite small.
Bloody hell.
And so we need to make that be more economical there. And they talk about with the electricity grid, because the power grid needs to work all the time. It needs to be up 99.999% of the time or whatever it is. The metric is high. Therefore, if there's going to be a big load that we're anticipating, maybe it's December or January, there's going to be a hot summer's day where everyone has air conditioners on, and the peak demand is going to be, let's say it's 10 times what it normally is. It's going to be an astronomical peak. We have to build a grid that services that.
Absolutely.
And so for the other 360 days of the year, you've got all this spare capacity not being used.
And that's the issue, isn't it?
And that's where we've got waste. And so we can get smarter. And so we can use batteries to maybe bring the height of that peak down so it's cheaper. And then also we can do smart things around load shifting to fill up those other areas where we've just got excess capacity. It's like the idea of, someone made the analogy to me, it's like Melbourne Cup. There was, I don't know, I don't live in Melbourne. I hope this is the correct analogy. Maybe lots of cars drive to Melbourne Cup for traffic, right? So it's a busy traffic day. So we're going to build a 50-lane highway to the stadium to make sure traffic is good on that day. Right. Now, the rest of the year, who cares? Unfortunately, we just have this huge highway that just sits there because no one needs it, right? But we needed it to work on that day. Right. And that's how the grid works. And that's why it's so expensive.
That's a really good...
if we wanted to reduce... If we said, let's allow blackouts sometimes, then we could bring the costs down enormously. But I don't think that'll win votes or be so palatable. I'm not advocating.
No.
I mean, not yet.
No, I know you're not. Stop it.
In case that was not clear.
That's right. For the people listening, again, there's a big grin.
They made the analogy with rockets, where I can't remember if it was NASA or SpaceX, but they were like, NASA doesn't want rockets to explode. They spend a fortune making sure it will not explode. And they realized, no, you could dial that back by a half, make building a rocket a tenth of the cost or whatever it is. It just means rockets blow up twice as much.
Yeah, right.
And that seemed like a good idea until you realize people kind of don't like the idea of rockets exploding.
They don't want people to die.
You have to spend more.
Rockets. Yes,
it's all satellites now, isn't it? I think so.
And most of them attached to helium balloons. But hey, that's another. We'll talk about it another time. Now, I gotta mention, what's the official view? Because I've been asking your person.
I'm worried.
No. Well, maybe I won't. Forget about the official view. What about? We've got existing fossil fuels at the moment. We've still got coal. We've still got gas. It seems like the current government is saying that gas has a fairly substantial role to play for some time to come, in addition to shore up renewables. What's your view on the whole the existing use of gas? We won't talk about coal. Oh, yes, we will, but later.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I'll use my personal views.
Yeah, please.
Definitely.
Please.
Gas is very clever. Let's call it fossil gas because it's not natural gas. That industry is very, very smart because they've captured people's hearts and minds and brainwashed us so well. And it started years and years ago. Think about gas cooking, right? And we talked about gas cooking earlier. I bet there are people that would swear to death that you could only cook with a gas cooktop. It's the only way to cook well is with a gas cooktop. Electric cooktops, there's no way. Then they would talk about you can't get the same level of control and the flame and all this nonsense. They're actually brainwashed. You can get, with electricity, you can go decimal with this. You can get 100% or 0% control, right? You can dial that needle perfectly. I could go to 4,000 decimal points with how much control, right? Gas probably. I want half an extra joule. Yeah. But the gas industry knew that people are emotional about cooking. No one cares about gas hot water. No one cares about gas heating. But they care about their cooktops. And so it was in like the 90s or the 80s. They marketed this really, really heavily. And they told everyone gas cooktops, and everyone believes it. And so everyone thought gas was the best. If you wanted the best kitchen or best appliances, of course you had gas cooktops. And what that naturally meant is, you've already got a gas connection because you've got a gas cooktop. Therefore, you may as well get the gas hot water. You may as well get the gas heating and cooling system. And so that was the way that they could keep people on the network. And there's been some interesting examples with, I think it was MasterChef, one of these cooking programs where they talked about renewable green gas was in one of their barbecues or hydrogen gas. And so where the market's going to now is they're trying desperately to slow down how quickly you electrify. And so they're saying, there'll be renewable gas will be coming or hydrogen gas will be coming, or they're saying, please do anything you can. Your gas cooktop will still be okay. Keep the gas cooktop because they know that's the anchor for everything else. I mean, from my perspective, we need to do everything we can to decarbonize as quickly as possible. The more you read about fossil gas, you find out that it's actually as polluting as coal. And they talk about, there's these fugitive emissions and all of these other sort of, the whole emissions are actually enormous. And we're actually being we're being tricked into thinking it's a cleaner fuel. Yep. And whilst it might, we exist in a capitalist market, right? And it's like, great, it should exist as an option if we want to pay for it, but we should have a carbon tax on it probably, or something like this. We should, I don't know if carbon tax is politically appetizing anymore, but I simplify it to people. I was like, we walked on the street earlier. You talked about running and breathing fumes. And it's like, where else can you just throw your waste away and not pay for it or not have stewardship for it? Do you, when you leave the office, do you smoke a few cigarettes, chuck them in the drain, and then you drink your can of soft drink and chuck that on the floor? And then you just leave your refuse lying around. There's nowhere else can you do it. But with a car or with energy, it's fine, pollute the air, no one cares, yet we all breathe it.
That's a really good point.
To me, that's where it comes down to. It comes down to air quality. This is how I would try and particularly if I was talking to my parents or their generation, how would I talk about why they should give a shit about pollution from energy? And it's just air quality is really simple. You breathe air. You don't want asthma, allergies.
Yep. I think one thing that the gas companies have used in their favour is this, and hear me out because it goes fairly deep. It's genetics. For hundreds, possibly thousands of years, we cooked with fire. We cooked with this tangible thing we can see. It had a flame. And gas is very similar to that. And I think that's one of the reasons people still hang on to it, because of that connection, that primal aspect.
Yeah, I think I agree with you.
And I think they would have done their research and they would have capitalised on that.
There's something about the flame. It's
something about
almost
the flame.
Like it's alive, right? You can just stare and watch a flame.
Absolutely.
You can be transfixed by it.
And a campfire is a wonderful thing when you go camping. And I have my own views about...
You get out the induction stove off the electric car and Dad, can't we have a fire?
I've got my own views about burning wood because it is sustainable. There are things like rocket mass heaters that actually have bugger all particulate matter when they come in if built well and all that stuff. But I think that's probably one of the things they're using in conjunction with, it's the best way to cook, you don't have the control and all this other bullshit.
I think you bang on.
And I just thought of it while you were talking. I thought, what is it about? But it's that bloody flame thing.
We have a slow combustion fireplace in our house. We didn't use it last year, but we could use it. It's if the weather's extraordinarily miserable, lighting a log in the fire is actually a really nice thing to do.
Damn right.
It's quite powerful.
But lighting a gas stove and all the naughty toxins that come off. Sorry, this is my bloody computer. All the toxins that come off with, especially that there's a lot of range hoods that don't actually
work.
They work, but they just exhaust into a box, not even into the roof cavity. They're supposed to actually exhaust to the outside. And I know I used to be a builder. I saw some pretty shitty kitchens in my time. Look, it's a really interesting one. Now, on that note of gas, biogas. Biogas. We've got a pretty mature industry where, sewage farms, etc., have been capturing biogas for a very long time and utilising that. What's your view on using biogas as compared to, say, the other gas, the natural gas, but it's not fossil fuel gas? Yeah.
Oh, look, I'm all for it. I mean, if we've got landfill and it's producing methane and we can capture that and or then turn it into a useful energy source, we'd be crazy not to do it. To me, that's an efficiency thing. If it's already there, we should absolutely utilize it. If we've got decaying matter or whatever it is,
Yes.
absolutely. That's very different to like fracking.
Oh,
Like
totally.
Is biogas going to save Australia? Probably not. I don't necessarily think we need to be doing broadacre crops to create biomethanol and all that. That probably doesn't quite make as. I don't know about that when we've got sort of food challenges. But
Totally
certainly
agree.
decaying matter, if we can capture, I'm not against the concept of gas. It's sort of like, what gas are you talking about? Look, I'm very gassy. I'll put my hand up. My wife would agree with me.
Stop it. That's funny, mate. That's a dad joke for sure. Love it. It's an interesting thing because you're right. You're talking about capturing this biomass that
It's already there.
it's already there.
Doesn't it get released to the atmosphere if you don't burn it?
Well, this is the thing, and we could talk about how forests, the decaying matter in forests and this, that, and the other. It's this interconnection between all things. I think it's something that a lot of people are talking about. I like the idea of biogas. I like the idea that you can actually utilise that gas for cooking, for heating. There's a lot of movement in dairies using the actual excrement from the cows and creating biogas and using that heat source to do various address various loads like chilling and stuff like that. And also, if done correctly, the waste product is something you can use as a fertiliser, etc. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. This is just going to be sitting there doing whatever, putting to landfill, what have you, as opposed to fracking. I mean, I can't believe how anyone can justify fracking in any way, shape, or it's just ridiculous stuff.
It's not really talked about so much anymore.
Oh, mate. But it goes on,
For a
though.
reason, I believe so.
In
I don't know how
Queensland?
much of our new gas is fracking, and like this, I'm way out of how much I really know and understand. But
Yeah, right.
you've got all the issues with air quality, but then you've got all the issues with groundwater or ground quality. Like, can we not see the writing on the wall that maybe there's better ways of doing energy? And there actually is, and that's why we're trying to do it.
That's now solar. Now, solar seems to be the main focus. Am I correct in saying that solar is the main focus of the Smart Energy Council? I know it's renewables in general, but
It's a really important pillar.
yeah.
I don't know if I can necessarily say it's like a main focus, but there's some real key pillars of what we do, and certainly renewable energy and solar is a really important part of it. Is that right? Do you want me to keep going?
So I thought you were going to expand on that. You caught me unaware.
Certainly, where we are trying, we try and work where our members need us to operate is effectively as simple as it is, right? So we try and create wins or improve policy or whatever it is, improve the landscape based on what our members need. Certainly right now, and particularly small scale solar and batteries is just an area that requires a huge amount of effort. There's a huge amount of growth. It's a phenomenal space. But we are doing some other really great things in like stewardship, for example, around like recycling of solar panels. We're doing a lot of work around growing international markets in the renewable energy space. And we're doing some stuff. I think we're trying to stand up higher installation qualities in India as an example.
Wow.
There's some stuff we're trying to do around decarbonisation
Massive
around
market.
the Pacific. Well, these emerging markets you talked about, there's a lot of people there moving up into the middle class. Their energy needs are going up. They're already got highly electrified mobility options. Australia is actually so advanced in many ways where we can export a whole heap of knowledge, standards, ways of doing things. What I really like is the grid it's not broken, but I'm going to say it's broken. The grid is so broken. It's transitioning so quickly from a one-way or a one-to-many, which was the old fossil fuel model, carbon intensive, to this many-to-many model that everything's under strain, everything's getting disrupted. And so we're all trying to figure out how on earth do you fix everything, where are all the problems, how does it all work? And it's extraordinarily complicated. And we're like the sandbox for that other worlds or other economies can look at and kind of learn. And, even in Australia, we might look at South Australia and say, you've got really high penetration of renewable energy. What does that mean for your grid? How do you keep the lights on? What do we need to learn? What about cybersecurity, etc.? So if I'm sitting there in Texas, America, Europe, all of these different places, they can actually look at Australia and kind of learn, this is where we will be going, and they can, we could all probably export ourselves as consultants and make a fortune, leaving Australia and teaching everyone.
For anyone listening,
just if you're listening, let me know.
That's a really good point. So the eyes are actually on Australia because
in many ways.
Yeah,
Yep.
wow. And all they have to do is learn what to do and what not to do and adjust it to their own geographic location. Obviously, we suffer from the tyranny of distance in regards to the distribution of the energy. Like Australia's bloody big, right? And cable losses, cabling costs, the whole lot compared to say a smaller country, say in Europe or even in Asia. They have different problems. I'd never thought we're actually, so we're doing some good stuff.
This is what I learned about when I was at this Goodway conference, and amongst others, we're doing great stuff. Absolutely, the stuff we're doing with CSIP, interoperability, flexible exports, the dynamic operating envelopes, emergency backstop. A lot of this stuff has not necessarily been done before.
Wow.
There's not a standard that you can just copy and paste in.
Wow.
So what we're doing in some ways is cutting edge. I went to this CSIP conference, and there was a DNSP there from New Zealand. And they were there going, oh my gosh, we have none of these problems. Sucks to be you. We should, but we'll learn what we need to do when we need to.
Yeah,
learn.
right.
Which is that's a really cool thing. It's another thing Australia can export is the smarts and the expertise in us breaking the grid and then trying to rebuild it in a decarbonised way.
Finally, have you got some thoughts for people listening about renewable energy, what the Smart Energy Council does, what we should be doing as a community effectively? Any sort of last words just to sum everything up that we've talked about?
I think what's really
big ask.
Yeah, and I'll have a go. No,
go
I think what's really important on a human level is just bring everyone on the journey with you. And so what I'm learning is there's huge differences in literacy around energy literacy, all of these different things. And energy can get extraordinarily complicated. Even reading a bill can be so hard to understand. So it's if you know a little bit, share that knowledge with people. We're in this bubble in the solar industry where we're like a little echo chamber where we talk to people, what I'm talking about. People I talk in the industry will understand, but most people probably have no idea what you're talking about. So share a little bit with them. Help someone go on that journey. Ask them a leading question that might help people think about, maybe I should get rid of my gas hot water system because of the rebates, because of the planet, because of my bill, all of these sorts of reasons. I feel like actually there's a human connection that you can do. Now look, if you're not a member of the Smart Energy Council, of course, join. If you're a solar installer, we have a free membership for solar installers called Smart Installer. We run I call it the Facebook. It's like a Facebook marketplace for CPD training where you can just log in, grab all your CPD points online on demand. I have my license, it's coming up in 18 days and I desperately need 100 points. So I'm going in there and I'm doing the courses, right? And
That's funny.
Normally you do it a day out, right? But I'm doing it 2 weeks out because I'm organised.
You've done well.
But so we try and do that. If you're an installer, jump on there. If you're running a little solar business, absolutely come in and join us. We run a bunch of WhatsApp chats where people are talking about some of these topics in real time.
Wow.
Particularly there's been a couple of big headlines around product issues and challenges around warranties and things. If you're unsure about this, if you're a member, you'd know about it because people are talking about and discussing it. And if you're just a normal person in the world, good on you. Electrify your home and bring someone else on the journey. Don't leave anyone behind.
Mate, thanks very much for coming in. I knew it would be good. It was an absolute pleasure. I reckon sometime next year we'll bring you back from part 2 because we covered probably about 10-15% of what I've got written down. Yeah, thanks very much. That was great.
It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to you and Greenwood Academy.
No worries. That was great. Thank you.